Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is actually Friday night. It's probably, I think it's going on like 10 o'clock at night right now. Anyway, got my daughter Sarah moved into a little townhome that she's going to be living in, and so that's all good. Kids on the move, and they're all in the area. I mean, that's amazing. In Nampa, Idaho, of all things. Wow, who'd have thunk, right? Yeah. Anyway, it's good to see you. And metaphorically. I mean, I visually can't actually see you, but I started a series last week about looking into our past and learning from our past, and I want to continue to do that today, and we'll see where it goes. This is going to be a really rough message. This is really the first time I've kind of gone through the outline, which is going to be behind me, and so we'll see where it goes, and so bear with me. It's just been kind of a busy week, and is what it is. It's a series I'm simply entitling Back to the Future. I know, not real novel, not real creative there. I get it. But we're focusing on dealing with our past in order for us to move forward. Move forward with emotional and spiritual health. They coincide. They're intertwined with one another. As relational beings, we are shaped by our experiences. Can't emphasize that enough. By the relational experiences we've had with other human beings. Some of our greatest injury and trauma, pain and blessing are due to how we have connected to other people. Our deepest wounds, our greatest healings come through our relationships with others. Some of you who attended last week picked up a genogram workbook. This is available online. In fact, I just shot an email out to everyone we have an email for, pretty much, a copy of the genogram workbook. There's an attachment you can click on, plus some worksheets for last week's message and actually for this week's message as well. That are needed and will assist you in putting together your genogram. Now, the genogram, once again, is basically a way of you laying out your family tree as far back as you can go, at least 2 to 3, maybe 4 generations, okay? And it's to assist you in looking for patterns within your family's life, patterns of behavior that can very well be influencing you and your children and your children's children. It could be that you see throughout your family history a history of people getting divorces or abandonment or drug abuse, whatever, substance abuse, addiction, whatever the case may be, or misogynistic behavior you have seen across the generations, and it seems to be continuing, whatever. The genogram gives you an opportunity to look at behavior, not only bad, but also good. Okay? So, and if you want a copy of the genogram workbook and all the worksheets, please let us know via Facebook or our website or email, the church office. We'll get it to you. Okay? All right. So, we have all inherited a framework and a pattern from our family of origin and our family of culture in how we see ourselves and in how we relate to others. Perhaps you have wondered a bit, questions like, well, why do I keep dating the same kind of person? Why do I keep ending up in a codependent relationship where I'm enabling this bad behavior? Why do I do this? Why do I keep losing my sense of self in a relationship? I don't know where I begin or end anymore. It just gets so unhealthy and I keep doing it. While much of this can be a conscious decision, entering these relationships, there's also a subconscious level here that very likely we have been influenced by our family and our culture of origin in the decisions we make. At some level, we've all been formed and informed in behavioral patterns when it comes to relationships. So that's what we are looking at today. And here's just a kind of a, well, yeah, Steve, but it's a statement. I'm going to put it up here behind me, I think. Nothing changes till something changes, right? Right? I mean, you can get that, I think. The way we relate doesn't change unless we do something about it. Now, to dig into this a bit, we're going to pick up the story in the Bible where we left off last week, and it's kind of an involved story, so hang with me. Last week, if you recall, and you can go back and find the message if you haven't seen it, we addressed the family of Abraham, Father Abraham and his wife Sarah, and then their descendants, his son Isaac and his wife Rebekah, and then we talked about Jacob, who was the son of Isaac along with Esau. We really focused on Jacob and his 12 sons. And we saw a pattern of sin through the generations get repeated over and over again, whether it was sibling rivalry, whether it was misogynistic behavior towards the women in the family, whether it was just downright deceit, or whether it was showing favoritism among the kids, and the tragic results of doing that and the fallout of that. We looked at all of that last week. Now, as I said, Father Abraham had many sons, and they were all messed up. Oversimplification. But this dysfunctional pattern is really interesting within Father Abraham's descendancy, if you will. The pattern ceased to continue in some ways when it got to Joseph, one of the 12 sons of Jacob. So we're going to look at Joseph's story just a bit today. Joseph was one of Jacob's 12 boys who broke this pattern of very negative behavior within the family. So we're going to look at the story. We're going to pick it up at Genesis chapter 41, beginning with verse 45. I'm just going to once again just kind of paraphrase the story and just kind of share it from the heart. I was going to say off the cuff, but let's do it more off the heart, okay? It sounds better. Let me give you some background here. Joseph was Jacob's favorite among all the boys. He was born of one of Jacob's wives, Rachel, who was also Jacob's favorite wife. He had 2 wives and 2 concubines that he had children through. Joseph may have been Dad's favorite among all the kids, but among his brothers, he was like the least favorite, okay? He was kind of a tattler. He would tell on his brothers and go to Dad, and he was a dreamer, and sometimes his dreams seemed like he came across kind of being full of himself, telling his brothers at one point, I had this dream that you basically are going to be bowing before me at some points in our lives. Dad gave him that coat of many colors. We talked a little bit about this last week. And so here's Joseph walking around in his beautiful coat that Dad gave him, and his brothers are walking around like in dirty t-shirts and jeans. You think they're a little PO'd with their brother Joseph? Yeah, I think so. They get to the point where they end up actually throwing poor Joseph into a cistern, into a big old well. And apparently it was empty, had no water in it. It was in the wilderness. And it's like, they threw him in there. They were kind of tired of listening to him. And what did they do after they threw him into the cistern? They had a meal. They sat around that cistern just eating. I could just see them eating there, probably laughing and joking. And Joseph's yelling up from the cistern, "Get me out of here," right? And they're just like, what do we do with him now? Now that he's down in the cistern. This is kind of a serious move we made towards our brother. Well, it just so happened that a caravan of Ishmaelites came along. They were caravanning all the way down to Egypt, and they were carrying with them things like resin and gum to sell down in Egypt. Well, Joseph's brothers decided, let's give him Joseph also to carry on down to Egypt and sell him as well with their other goods. And that's what they did. They proceeded to take Joseph's favorite coat dip it in some blood of an animal they had slaughtered, took it back to Dad, and Dad just grieved, saying some wild beast tore up his son Joseph, and Joseph's brothers just kind of zipped it and let Dad believe that Joseph was dead. Okay. While in Egypt, Joseph gets sold to Potiphar, okay? A high-ranking official down there in Egypt. He was the captain of the army, captain of the guard of Pharaoh. So he was a really important guy, okay? Kind of a little mini grand poobah next to the Pharaoh. Well, Joseph's, working for Potiphar. And Potiphar, his wife, saw Joseph, and Joseph was quite handsome, and she tried to seduce Joseph. Joseph wouldn't have anything to do with it. She was a woman scorned. So she goes to her husband and says, and lies to him, saying, that Joseph of yours, he tried to seduce me. So poor Joseph is thrown into prison. Well, while Joseph is there in prison, he hears some dreams from some of the people in prison and from the prison guards, and he begins to interpret them, and the dreams begin to come true. Now, Pharaoh, the poobah, the grand poobah in Egypt, hears about Joseph being able to interpret dreams. So he asked Joseph to interpret some of his dreams, some of Pharaoh's dreams, because Pharaoh's been having some whopper of a dream lately, some really bizarre dreams, and he wants to understand what they're all about. And Joseph is brought before Pharaoh, and he says to Pharaoh, this particular dream you're dreaming, what it symbolizes, I won't go into the dream itself, but what it symbolizes, Joseph said to Pharaoh, is that there is going to be 7 years of abundance, of fruitful land. But that will be followed by 7 years of famine. So you need to, during these 7 years of abundance that are coming up, you need to be storing away grain so that you can make it through the very lean times that will be coming. Well, Pharaoh appreciated Joseph's take on all this and gave him a wife by the name of Asenath, okay? And Joseph and Asenath had 2 sons. The first son that they had, his name was Manasseh, which means God help me to get over, essentially, to forget, if you will, to some degree, my hardships in my family, especially with my brothers. And then Joseph had his second child with Asenath, and the second child they gave the name of Ephraim, meaning God made me fruitful in a land of misfortune. Now, so Joseph had a wife and 2 sons. Now, this may sound like, okay, big deal. As you read scripture, he had these 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay, big deal, whatever. This is very crucial to the entire story. It sounds insignificant until you remember Joseph's family roots. Okay? Joseph had 1 wife. His dad, Jacob, had 2 wives, 2 concubines. Granddad, Isaac, had multiple wives, as did great-granddad, Abraham, have multiple wives. Joseph decided to make a different choice. 1 wife. Joseph was handsome, he was powerful, he was wealthy. He could have had as many wives as he wanted in Egypt. He had 1. And he had 2 sons, okay? Which sounds familiar because great-grandpa Abraham, right, had 2 sons, and so did grandpa Isaac have 2 sons. Of course, his father Jacob had many sons. Joseph decides to stay with the 2 kids, right? What is fascinating here is that Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, those 3 generations, all played favorites among their boys in particular. Joseph, on the other hand, gives very special, meaningful names to his 2 boys. He does not play favorites among them. He gives them names to celebrate how God has been working in his life, and he sees both of his boys as a blessing, unlike the past generations of his family. Joseph was making a conscious decision to no longer continue this family pattern of favoritism and misogyny and sibling rivalry. No more. No more. Pretty cool. Well, the famine does come to Egypt, as Joseph had predicted it would through the dream interpretation. But Egypt, of course, was prepared because of Joseph's dream and telling Pharaoh, collect the grain. So people in other lands from around Egypt came down to Egypt seeking food. And Joseph at this point was made Pharaoh's second in command, and he oversaw the distribution of the grain. Now, enter Joseph's brothers. Genesis chapter 42. Jacob, Joseph's dad, and the boys, his brother's dad, right, heard that there was food in Egypt. So he sends his sons down to Egypt to purchase some food. Joseph's brothers go before the Egyptian official who is distributing the food, which just happens to be Joseph. Joseph recognizes his brothers immediately. His brothers don't recognize him, probably because he was dressed like an Egyptian official. And you know what? He was sold years ago. He's, as far as they're concerned, he's just history. They weren't looking for Joseph, but Joseph saw his brothers there and recognized them. And what did Joseph's brothers do when they bow down? When they see Joseph, they bow down before him, not knowing it's Joseph. But at that point, they are giving life to the dream Joseph had years ago, that they would bow before him. Joseph doesn't divulge his identity. He struggles, though. He wants to tell them. He wants to be reconnected with family, but he doesn't want to let them off easy. So it's a very human tension that Joseph has at the moment. Joseph pretends at one point that his brothers are spies, that they came down here as spies. So he's giving them a hard time at the moment. And he says, take the grain that you purchased, but you got to leave a hostage. One of you have to stay behind. You have to go and bring back your youngest brother, I believe, who did not come down with you, Benjamin, and bring him back down here, and then I'll release the one brother you leave with me. And so the brothers go with the grain that they had purchased, go back to Dad and tell Dad the whole situation, and the boys return with Benjamin, the youngest. Now, Benjamin was also a son of Rachel, the same mother as Joseph, and was younger than Joseph. And when Joseph saw his little bro, oh my, his big heart just began to swell. Joseph did. He had a really hard time. It was just swelling with love when he sees his younger brother, Benjamin. The brothers buy more grain, and they begin to leave. But Joseph doesn't want them to go. He just doesn't want them to go. So what does he do? He still doesn't tell them who he is. He takes a royal household silver chalice, and he places it on top of the bag, inside the bag, on top of the grain, in Benjamin's bag. And the brothers go off, right? And then Joseph says to the guards, those men who just left, one of them took some of the royal silverware. Go get them. So they go and they find the chalice in Benjamin's bag. And at that point, when they're brought before Joseph, he's through with playing games. He's given them a hard enough time, right? So he tells them who he is. And they all fall into each other's arms and weep. Joseph had every right to refuse to sell them grain. He had every right to curse them. He had every right to imprison them. He had every right to take their life. Joseph chose love rather than hate. He chose forgiveness rather than vengeance. The brothers were scared. They knew Joseph could take their life, put them to death. But Joseph is saying, no, guys, don't be angry with yourselves, okay? It was to save lives that I was brought down here ahead of you. There are still 5 years of this famine left to suffer through. Go up back north, go get Dad. Our family lives because God has revealed to me to store this grain. So go get Dad, you all come back down here to Egypt and live down here with me. In this love, Joseph is breaking, if you will, or cuts off the generational brokenness that has plagued his family of origin for generations. So 3 things to see in Joseph's life here. Okay. 1, he lets his family inform him. He looks at his family and he sees a narrative that he does not like. He wants to stop it. He knew about Papa Abraham and Papa Isaac and his Uncle Esau, all right? He knew all about their legacy and the dysfunction, and he wanted nothing to do with it. So he lets the family inform him, and he decides he wants to go another direction. So Joseph does what? He chooses another path. He blesses. He doesn't kill the offenders. He chooses one wife to love, not several. He doesn't treat women as property. He blesses his 2 sons equally. Joseph's experience in that cistern that his brothers threw him into, his enslavement, his imprisonment, became moments that God used to bless Joseph, and that's how he saw it. And then, 3rd, it's all very simple. Joseph chose to allow God to use what happened in the past as a way to move forward and become a blessing, right? Joseph's choices were catalytic to keeping a family line going that would eventually bring us Jesus. A key lesson for us today: the past must inform us even if we're scared and overwhelmed. How we relate to others has influenced us. Many therapists, scientists, people looking into all this, psychologists saying that our family has influenced us from the day we were born. Some say we are getting formed in how we relate to people even in utero. In the 1970s, a woman by the name of Mary Ainsworth did a study of 100 middle-class families. And she found 4 primary ways that we as humans connect and attach to one another. Let me walk through this. I'm not the person to be talking about all this, but I'm putting it out there as best I can. 4 primary ways she found that humans connected with each other. First, there is secure attachment. This is a person who is emotionally secure in who they are. They are happy, they are free to explore in relationships, and they feel safe. Now, in this study that Ainsworth did, she would have a mother leave her child in a room with a stranger. The mother had been playing a game with the child. She leaves the room with a stranger. Of course, the child will cry. It's a young child. The mother returns to console the child. The child quickly calms down, and mother and child pretty quickly go back to playing the game that they were playing before she left the room. At a formative level, the child has learned that the mother will care for his or her needs. A secure attachment has been formed. Now, Mary Ainsworth discovered in this study that there's also anxious attachment. That is, in this form of attachment, a child feels very insecure in a relationship. And it can come out as anger, it can come out as tension. At a deep level, you believe, when you have this kind of attachment, at a deep level, you believe you cannot rely upon mom to get your needs met in this particular study. In that study, a child suffering from this anxious attachment would cry when mom would leave the room. Okay, same scenario, would leave the room. Mom would come back, console the child, but the child would act out, expressing anger against Mom after they'd been consoled, and often throwing the toy that they had been playing with before she left the room, throw the toy, or do something of anger towards Mom. The child had learned somewhere in its life that Mom is not always there to meet his or her needs, and not everyone is safe. That's anxious attachment. And then Mary Ainsworth found in a study a third form that way we human beings connect, avoidant attachment. Here the person is emotionally distant, reluctant to enter into relationships because their needs can't be met. In the study, when Mom consoles the child, it comes back after leaving him and it consoles the child, that the child would posture their body away from Mom, expressing, if you will, through body language, an underlying fear that if that child gets close, they will get hurt. And then, fourth and finally, there is the disorganized attachment. This combines really the anxious and avoidant attachment. A child displaying this is emotionally depressed, at times angry, at times non-responsive, but generally confused in how to get his or her needs met. The child will either be aggressive or avoid Mom when she would come back into the room after leaving. Now, I'll be a little personal here. I displayed this kind of attachment, apparently with my mom at a very young age. After my father had died, I was going back and forth between being really clingy to Mom, fearing of losing her, or I was withdrawing from her, withdrawing into myself, and especially I can remember holding on to a stuffed animal I called Mousy, which I still have. I've shared that with you. In fact, I still have Mousy in my office. So you think I'm still a little disorganized in my attachment, Oh. Anyway. At the core of human attachment is this. Every single person has an innate need to be pursued, enjoyed, and to be intimately known. From a tiny age, we are processing information to determine whether or not we are pursuable, whether or not we are enjoyable, whether or not people want to get to know us. Problem is, sin enters the picture, and people begin to believe a lie that they are not pursuable, that they are not enjoyable, and that nobody wants to get to know them. And that is a lie from Satan himself. Richard Plass and James Cofield wrote a book entitled The Relational Soul, and this is what they said. The quality and character of the relations modeled for us early in life establishes a pattern of attachment that controls our relations later in life. Exactly what I've been saying, right? Figuring out how to relate to people is so significant. If you have a dysfunctional relationship with your parents and make no effort, for example, for any kind of reconciliation, and then, on the other hand, you say, well, I am totally fine in my relationship with God. For me, that raises a lot of red flags. Because, dear friends, and you can disagree with me on this one, but I'm going to put it out there. How you relate to people is how you relate to God. Think about that. How you connect and attach to people is how you connect and attach to God. If you tend to be impatient with people, if you tend to manipulate people, if you tend to abandon relationships, cue up how you relate to God, and you will see, I bet you, a similar pattern. Yes, we live in a broken world. Maybe you see yourself in all of those insecure attachments. Okay? Enter Jesus. Jesus has always pursued you. Okay? He has always enjoyed you. And oh, how he desires to intimately know you. He's so in love with you. Jesus is the perfect attachment for us, which means no matter where you are on the attachment spectrum, whether you're avoidant, whether you're anxious, whether you're secure, whatever, wherever you are on that, whether you're disorganized, you can find a healing and a healthy attachment through and by Jesus. Jesus, who wants to reconcile all things. A key first step, I believe, in reconciling with others is permitting the past to inform us. Looking at family behavioral patterns when it comes to relationship. It's not to make you feel shame or guilt. It's to set you free, okay? In Genesis, Joseph looks at his family of origin, decides, you know what, there's stuff there I don't want to have anything to do with. I want to be free of it. No more. Now you may look at your family past and think, Dad and Grandpa may have abandoned their families, but I haven't. But maybe you have a tendency to abandon commitments elsewhere, perhaps at work, perhaps with friends, perhaps with neighbors. Maybe. Maybe you can say, I'm not an alcoholic, like my dad, like my grandpa. But maybe you're a workaholic. Think about it. Good news. There's good news in all of this. Can't do it by yourself. Can't do it by yourself. I know you've tried, but the behavior continues. You can't do it by yourself. Sorry. Ain't happening. Ain't happening. We need to get to a point of humility and just ask for help. And maybe it just begins with asking God for help, all right? All right? Show you how crazy it is or how insane I am. I was working on my genogram, and I began to think, I haven't asked God for any help here. I'm just working at it myself. But you know what the attitude I had was? It's like, it's okay, God, I got it, you know? Oh, you're so sweet to offer, God, but you know what? I've got this. You have more important things to do. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He wants to be a part of your life. He wants to help open your eyes to what is, what has happened, and what can be. He wants to be in a relationship with you. Oh, he adores you. What would it look like if you started to say no to certain destructive behaviors that you've seen in your family or in your life? What would it look like for your kids, for your grandkids? Okay, this isn't just about you. Truth is, some of us need to get our backsides back into community. I love you. But you're not going to lean into life in a healthy way until you lean into each other. Sunday morning worship experiences doesn't cut it. All right? And as has been said, the church of the 50s is gone. It is finally gone. Good riddance. It did its thing. We've got to move on in how we do church. Sorry, we just do. We want to survive. Just the way it is. And I do believe, you know, as beautiful it is seeing people in a sanctuary, it's kind of hard to connect with people relationally, looking at the back of their head. That is why I believe, and I'll keep beating the drum, that life groups are so essential for a church. And later this summer and this fall, we will be having them, and I'm encouraging everyone, I'm encouraging the disciples' women to turn their circles, their women's circles, into life groups. I know it scares them to no end, the thought of that. It's okay. It's all right. We need to be intentional about building relationships. Not about raising money, not about having meetings, but connecting at a relational level where we help each other become that apprentice, that disciple of Jesus, and we will do anything that is necessary to help that person. Okay? We all need to hear people. We all need people to say to us when we're having a bad day. We need people to say to us, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you. Yeah, things are really dark for you right now, but you know what? I'm there for you. We need to put into practice Jesus' words. I'll not leave you nor forsake you. Those words are the essence of a life group. That is what we need to give life to. A life group should be always trying to help each other, but always looking for someone else, keeping an empty chair there, knowing that someone else can benefit from being a part of that fellowship. And when it gets a little too big, divide up. Yeah, it's not about a clique. It's about building and sharing the good news. Building community. Genesis chapter 50. 15 through 21, we see the final narrative in Joseph's story. Father Jacob dies, father of Joseph and the 11 other boys. And Joseph's brothers freak out, right? Joseph's been nice to them and kind to them, but now they're thinking, now that dad's gone, maybe Joseph is really going to, you know what? Play out probably that deep-seated grudge he has towards us. So the brothers go to Joseph, and I love this in Scripture. It says, the brothers say to Joseph, your father wants you to forgive us. Your father, what are they saying? They all have the same father. But they go to Joseph, your father wants you to forgive us, Joseph, okay? We're just letting you know that. And Joseph and his brothers weep at that moment. And they say to Joseph, we're your slaves. And Joseph is like, really? Stop it, guys. Stop it. You don't need to be afraid, okay? This fear you have, this dysfunction is so deep-seated. Stop it. I'm not your God. I'm not your master. You intended to do me harm. Yes. Okay? God intended it for good, though. You're my brothers. We're going to make it together, but we're going to do it together. We're going to get through this famine because of what God revealed to me in a dream. I get it. I get it that I was a bit full of myself with my dreams at a younger age and walking around in my coat of many colors. Yeah, I can understand where I peeved you off a bit. Okay, I'm going down a bunny trail right now. I'm paraphrasing here. But Joseph, he understands that. But it's like he's saying to his brothers, look around you. Look at where we are. Look at where we've come from. And look at where we are and where we can be. God's hand has been in all of this. We're together. We're not perfect, but we are together and we are a family. We're going to make it. It's beautiful. We need to have that same kind of attitude as a church. We're a mess, but we're going to make it. Key lesson in Joseph's story. And this is going to be a tough one to hear for a lot of us. Let your past bless you. God has given you and your family a story. It isn't always really pretty, all right? But I think we all know how it ends. Jesus wins, okay? If you have junk to deal with, then deal with it. If you need a therapist, go to a therapist, okay? It's a good thing. Bring that darkness into the light and get it dealt with. If doing a genogram will help, then doggone it, work on your genogram, okay? I want you to be able to look at that stuff that you've avoided in your past, that stuff that's been destructive in your relationships, And this is really what I want you to say, and I'd love for you to say it with me. Okay? If I can get it up here. Say it with me. Stop! I'm not afraid of you anymore. Stop! You only have the control over me that I permit you to have. God can take all the negative and dark stuff, bring light to it, bring revival, bring resurrection power to it. If God can do that, and God did that with the cross, God can do that with any generational sin that has been passed down in your family story. I want to end with an example of a family doing this. They lived 2 houses up from me where I grew up. 2 of my best buddies, Wayne and Russell. I've spoken about them in other stories, I think. It was a household that they grew up in of daily, and I mean daily, physical and verbal abuse. Names like stupid pig and fat back were terms, supposedly, of endearment that the parents spoke to Wayne and to Russell. And those are kind words. Occasionally, Wayne and Russell would go see their grandparents in West Virginia. I went one weekend with them. The behavior there in that little homestead in West Virginia was the same. One behavior that was passed down from the previous 2 generations was the garbage can lid. Yeah, garbage can lid. You know, garbage cans used to be metal, with a metal lid to them. And discipline in his family, used by the grandparents and by Wayne and Russell's parents, was to take the metal lid of those garbage cans and hit Wayne and Russell with them. I can still see Wayne running, and it was kind of humorous a bit, all right, running away from his mom in the front yard for everyone to see, and she's wielding this metal can lid, garbage can lid, trying to hit her son. She's kind of, it was like a daily occurrence almost. Years later, Russell, the younger of the 2, he was, I think he was about 19 years old. And it was a couple of years before he would end up actually dying in a car accident. But Russell wanted to start his own business. And he started 2 businesses at the same time. I still have a handwritten flyer that he was passing out in the neighborhood. And what it said was, Russ's Landscaping and introducing the Heart Menders. Yeah, the Heart Menders. The landscaping is explainable. The mowing and the trimming, and Russell would do that. But the Heart Menders, what is that all about? Russell loved the song, here it is, from 71 or 72. How Can You Mend a Broken Heart by the Bee Gees. He loved that song in particular because there's one line that says, I can still feel the breeze that rustles through the trees. He was sure that the Bee Gees were singing his name, the breeze that rustles through the trees. I mean, he really did. He loved the song because of that. Anyway, he put together a little neighborhood band that would play for birthdays, backyard events. Guess what the primary percussion instrument was? It was a metal garbage can and that darn metal lid. I asked Russell about that. He said, it was used on my head so much, I got a good sense of the sound it could make. You want to laugh and cry at the same time, right? Russell took an instrument of abuse and made music out of that instrument of pain. Think about that. God can do that in your life. We all have hearts that need mending. We do. At some point or another, we do. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to acknowledge the brokenness of your heart and your family's heart through the generations. There's one line in the song, "How Can You Mend a Broken Heart?" which is a great song. It goes like this. I won't sing it. I'm no Barry Gibb. I'll put it up here. "We could never see tomorrow. No one said a word about the sorrow. Till we begin to say a word about the sorrow, the past, the sorrow that's in the past, and acknowledge it, and acknowledge its pull and its influence on us. Until we do that, our past will be but a misty memory that will prevent us from moving forward and living again. But so often we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to say a word about that sorrow, that pain, that anguish. We don't want to go there. And so it continues to impact our lives. In Jesus, you have a heart-mending friend who's never left you nor forsaken you. When the church is working well, it offers such community, where people do not give up on you, come hell or high water. Because, dear friends, we are heart menders for Christ. Mending begins when we address the past in order to move into tomorrow. Oh, dear God, help us mend our broken hearts and let us live again. Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks. Fill us with your peace. Help to mend our brokenness. Give us the strength to acknowledge our brokenness of the past, of the present. Give us the courage to do what we need to do. Change will not happen until we take that step, but we do not take it alone. You have reminded us that we are precious in your sight, that we are pursuable, that we are enjoyable, that we are worth the effort, and you want to get to know us. May we express that kind of love and devotion to each other and build something truly beautiful to your glory. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Love you guys, and I will see you next week. Take care.